A poor rancher's kindness brought 1,000 Zulu warriors to his ranch at dawn. By the time the first light came bleeding through the black pines, Elias Hart knew they were not just shadows out on the snow. He had been awake since the last stove ember dulled to black. The little plank house groaned as the cold deepened, timber joints clicking in protest. Wind pushed smoke back down the chimney now and then, filling the one-room space with the faint bitter sting of last night's spruce. He lay fully dressed on his bunk, boots still on, coat still buttoned, listening to the sort of silence that only came when the world was colder than it had any right to be. There was a second silence beyond it, the heavy quiet of people trying not to make sound. He sat up, swallowed a dry taste of fear, and reached for the old rifle leaning against the rough-hewn wall. The barrel felt colder than the air. He pressed his thumb against the frost-seamed window. A thin circle cleared, fogged again with his breath. He wiped once more and squinted out. They ringed his clearing. At first, his mind tried to count them, then gave up. Dark figures, wool and worn leather and patched shawls, standing in the blue dawn light like a forest that had learned to walk. They lined the edge where his chopped stumps met the untouched trees. Their breath plumed white. Some leaned on sticks. Some held bundles. Some carried children wrapped in blankets. He whispered to nobody, "God help me." They did not move. The snow squeaked under their boots when they shifted weight, but the sound didn't reach him. It was like looking at a painting of fear and desperation. The nearest woman met his eyes through the glass. Her face was narrow and strong, cheekbones sharp above chapped lips. A wool shawl hid her hair, but he saw the tightness in her jaw. She lifted her hand, palm open, fingers trembling once from the cold. Elias stepped back from the window. His heart hammered against his ribs like a man trying to break down a door. He had seen 3 of them, days before, staggering down the frozen wagon track through the trees. 3 dark-skinned women in thin clothes, walking in the wrong forest, lost in the wrong winter. He had given them food, fire, one night's warmth, and his last good blanket. They had spoken halting English, pieces of another language threaded through every word. Zulu, they called it. The word itself had tasted like smoke and salt on their tongues. They had left at dawn, hugging their chests as if trying to hold in whatever courage they had left. He had watched them disappear between the black spruces, tracking the sound of their steps until it emptied into the silence of deep woods. He had not thought they would return. Not like this. He looked around his cabin. At the rough table, the iron pot, the 2 chairs that he had whittled until his fingers cramped. His sacks of flour and oats were thin as starved ribs. His salted pork barrel was down to the taste of meat, not the sight of it. Firewood stacked against. The back wall would barely carry him through another month's deep snow. He opened his hand and looked at the dry cracks in his palm. A poor man's hand. A lonely man's hand. A hand that had given away more than made sense for someone with so little. He slung the rifle over his shoulder, thumbed the latch off the door, and stepped into the blue cold. The air bit his face like teeth. Snow squealed under his boots, high and sharp, a sound that didn't belong in any church or town. The line of people around his clearing turned toward him as one, the way trees might lean in a storm. He counted again. 50, 100, more. They crowded between the trunks, filling the dark gaps with their bodies and bundles. The dawn light caught on eyes that had seen too much distance, and not enough mercy. The woman who had lifted her hand stepped forward. The shawl slipped back a little, revealing tight braids glistening with frost. Her lips were cracked. Her eyes were clear. "You," she said. "You are Elias Hart." He nodded, throat too tight for words. "You gave us bread," she said. "You gave us fire. You gave my sister your blanket." Her voice shook, not from cold. "We told our people. They walked. They are here now. Elias looked past her shoulders into the forest of human faces. He saw young men hollowed by hunger, children whose noses ran clear in the cold, whose teeth chattered, old women leaning on younger arms. His mind snagged on the word she had used. People, he murmured. How many? She followed his glance, then shrugged one shoulder in a gesture that held the weight of too much. We counted, she said quietly. Then we stopped. Maybe 1,000. Maybe more. Maybe less. Her gaze sharpened on his. But they came because you were kind. He almost laughed, but it would have broken something in his chest. He shook his head slowly. I have barely enough for myself, he said. This. His hand waved weakly at the wall of human need. You should not have come here. The woman's jaw tightened. We were told there is nothing for us at the coast, she said. No work. No land. No shelter from the guns. We were put on ships, sent north like cargo. The men in uniforms left us in the harbor town. Sad we were free. The last word was brittle. Free to freeze. Free to starve. We walked inland. We followed tracks, rivers, rumors. We followed stories of a man who shares his fire. He heard the echo of his own foolishness. The way he had pressed that blanket into the woman's hands days before, saying, Take it, you'll die without it. The way one kindness had gone walking through the trees like a lantern, calling to others. I didn't mean, he started. She cut him off with a small, tired smile. We know you are a poor man, she said. We saw your house. Her eyes flicked to the sagging roof. We know you cannot feed us all. But they needed to see the man who did not close his door. Behind her, someone coughed, short and sharp. A child began to cry, the sound thin and high, snagging on the cold. Elias felt every eye on him, like branches pressing down. The weight of being seen. The weight of being believed better than he was. He swallowed once, twice. My barn is empty of animals, he said at last. Just tools and dust. The snow is deep, but we can clear some ground for fires. There's a creek down the slope. It's half ice, but you can break it. I cannot promise food for everyone, but I can give you what I have. I can show you where to cut trees. There is work in timber towns, if we can get you there alive. The woman's shoulders eased a fraction. Her voice softened. My name is Namusa, she said. If we die, we will die moving, not waiting. He nodded. Then we start, he said, before the sun gets high. He expected some cheer, some murmur of relief. None came. These were people beyond cheering. They simply began to move. They filed into the clearing, boots whispering on hard snow, breath rising like fog over a river. They clustered near his barn, near his chopping block, near his woodpile. The sound of their presence filled the cold morning rustle of cloth, click of teeth, the rattle of something hard in a bundle. He walked among them, pointing, talking between shivers. There, he said, to a group of younger men. Take those axes. Cut down the dead trees first. The ones with no needles. They burn better and won't rob the living ones of light. He pointed at an old woman shivering beside a child. Inside, he told her. By the stove. You too. He gestured at the little boy, who stared up with wide, dark eyes. It's cramped, but warmer than out here. Namusa shadowed him, translating when English failed. His words bounced off her tongue, reshaped but somehow heavier, as if her language packed more truth into each sound. He caught her watching him once, when he bent to drag a log. There was something guarded in her gaze. Not gratitude, exactly. Something closer to wary respect. As if she could not quite decide whether he was a fool or a saint. Why did you help us? She asked quietly, when they paused near the barn. He straightened, wiped his mouth with the back of his glove. "Because somebody once helped me," he said. "And I remember how that felt." "Who?" She pressed. "My brother," he said. The word hurt even now. "We came north from a rocky farm, farther south. Not enough soil, not enough rain. There was trouble. Arguments about debts. He took the blame for something I did to keep me out of prison. They took him instead." He looked past her, into memories that smelled of sweat and fear. "I came here because there was nowhere else to go. No one to answer to. No one to share with. Then you knocked on my door." Namusa's expression shifted. He saw something open and close, too quick to name. "Then perhaps this is his kindness, walking still," she said. Elias almost told her not to talk nonsense, but he saw the way the thought steadied her. He let it sit in the air between them like breath. They worked until the pale sun climbed above the pines. The clearing, once a lonely ring of stumps and snow, transformed. Fires sprouted wherever someone managed to coax flame from damp tinder and dry shavings. The smell of wood smoke thickened, wrestling with the raw scent of so many bodies huddled close. Children laughed once or twice when someone slipped in the snow. The sound startled Elias more than the crowd itself. Inside the cabin, the air turned hot and close. Old women sat shoulder to shoulder along the wall, their skirts overlapping. Children crowded near the stove, hands out, cheeks flushed with heat and relief. Elias moved carefully among them, ladling thin porridge from his pot into wooden bowls and tin cups, his jaw clenched at how quickly the level dropped. "This isn't enough," he muttered, watching the last scrape of oats slide into a cup. Namusa stood beside the door, arms folded tight against the draft. "It is today," she said. "Tomorrow we will find more." "From where?" he asked. "The trees don't grow bread." She smiled faintly. "No," she said, "but they grow work." By midday, the sky whitened with high cloud. The cold deepened again in that strange way winter had, colder at noon than morning. Elias's hands throbbed from splitting logs and dragging sledges. His breath burned his throat. Yet a stubborn heat had settled behind his ribs, part fury at the world, part fierce. Absurd pride. 1,000 souls, that was what it looked like. Even if the number was less, had found his forgotten patch of forest and decided it meant hope. It was an insult and an honor in the same breath. Word would travel. It always did. Timber bosses in the river towns, merchants in the settlements, men in uniforms riding slow horses. They would hear about a lonely lumberman harboring shiploads of foreign cast-offs. Some would come with offers, others with threats. He could feel the future pressing against his door, already dawned, as the light began to thin toward afternoon. He stood at the edge of his clearing, looking down the narrow track that threaded through the pines toward the nearest town, 2 days' hard march away. Namusa came to stand beside him, shawl pulled tight, breath pluming. "Do the men there have room for more hands?" she asked. "They always need bodies to swing axes," he said. "The question is what they pay, and in what coin." He paused. "Some will want you as little more than beasts. You know that. We have been treated as worse," she answered simply. "But if there is pay, there is bread. And maybe blankets of our own." She glanced sideways at him. "You are one man with a small house. You cannot carry all of us forever." "I know," he said. The admission scraped. "Then we must stop being your burden," she said, "and become your allies." He considered that word allies, as the French trappers liked to say. It sat strange in his mouth, but not unwelcome. "Allies," he repeated slowly. "In what?" "In surviving this place," she said. "In making something here that is not just freezing and dying." Her eyes were dark ember pits in the pale light. "You know the forest. We know how to endure men who think they own us. Between us, maybe we find a way. Between us, maybe we find a way. He watched his breath drift and vanish. They won't like it, he said. The bosses. The other men. They do not like us now, she answered. What changes? He huffed once, something almost like a laugh, then shook his head. You're not wrong. Behind them, an axe rang out, metal on frozen wood. A child shouted, then laughed as a rotten stump gave way and toppled. Somewhere near the barn, a woman began to sing under her breath, a low-threaded line, rough but steady, braiding through the creak of snow and murmur of voices. The melody carried something of the ocean in it, something of distance and loss. Elias felt it in the scars on his heart. You'll need leaders, he said. If we go to town, men like order. They'll want someone to talk to, someone they think speaks for you. Namusa's mouth tightened. We are not soldiers, she said. We did not choose ranks. He shrugged inside his coat. Out here, you take what the world thinks you are, and you bend it to what you need, he said. You can call it whatever you like. But if you don't choose your own leaders, someone else will choose them for you. She let that settle. Her gaze drifted over her people, over the hunched backs, the bent heads, the stiff shoulders. We have elders, she said slowly. Men who once commanded warriors. Women who once ruled households. But the ships broke more minds than bones. Many of them are quiet now. He understood. He had seen that kind of quiet before. The kind that didn't lift when the weather changed, thought her chin lifted a little. There's one who speaks and is heard, she said. Even when people pretend to ignore her. I will bring her to you tonight. Tonight, he repeated. Why not now? Because right now, they must see you helping, she said simply. Not choosing, not commanding, helping. She looked up at him. You were kind once. Do not stop being that in their eyes. He had never thought of himself as kind. More stubborn than soft, more weary than gentle. But the word hung there, unsolicited, like a coat draped over his shoulders. Heavy, unexpected, almost warm. All right, he said. They turned back toward the clearing. The little homestead had become a rough camp. Fires burned in 3 uneven circles. Men hacked at ice on the creek, cursing in languages that smoked on the air. Women stretched thin porridge with melted snow and scraped bits from his flour sacks as if each grain were gold. The world had shifted without his consent. It always did. He moved into it anyway. By late afternoon, the sky darkened at the edges. Elias's arms burned from work. His collar was frozen stiff with sweat. He stamped snow off his boots before stepping into his house, knowing it would barely matter. The floor was already tracked with slush. The heat of so many bodies turned it to mud. Inside, the air smelled of boiled oats, damp wool, and tired people. The stove ticked and hissed. A little boy slept against the wall, head tipped sideways, mouth slack. An old woman snored, her breath whistling on the inhale. Namusa ducked in behind him, bringing the cold with her. Another woman followed, small and wiry, a wool blanket wrapped tight over her shoulders. Her hair was threaded with gray. Her eyes were not. This is Gogo Thandeka, Namusa said. She is not the oldest, but when she speaks, people stop talking. Elias nodded. Ma'am, he said, almost automatically. Thandeka's mouth twitched. You speak like you were raised by a woman who washed your ears with cold water when you were rude, she said. Her accent held more Africa in it, less of the shore towns. Sit. He found himself obeying, half amused, half uneasy. He sank onto his bunk. The springs complained. Thandeka and Namusa remained standing. It felt deliberate. You did not ask for us to come, Thandeka said. You did not send word with the 3 that you would feed a village. You gave what you had because it was right, not because it was a promise. I see this. Elias shifted. uncertain whether to agree or deny. If I'd known it'd bring this many of you, he gestured at the crowded room, I might have thought twice. Then you would have thought yourself into a smaller man, Thandeka said sharply. But you did not. So now the world rests differently on your shoulders. She leaned forward slightly. You can choose to hate that, or you can stand up under it. He rubbed his cracked knuckles. You talk like my brother, he muttered. Your brother is not here, she said. We are. He looked up at her. I can't feed you all, he said. Not for more than a few days. That's the truth. I know that, Thandeka said. My stomach knows it. My people's eyes know it. Hunger is an old friend. We recognize it from a distance. She tapped one finger on his table. But food is not the only thing we came for. What else is there? He heard the bitter edge in his own voice and couldn't smooth it. Paths, she said simply. You know the paths. To work, to towns, to men who make decisions. We walked until the snow tried to eat our feet. We can walk more. But we need a direction that is not just away from the sea. He thought of the river town down valley, the logging camp beyond it, the sawmill farther still. He thought of rough bunkhouses and rougher talk, of bosses who counted men like cordwood. He imagined these people in those spaces. You'll face hard men, he said. And worse than hard. Men who'll see your skin before they see your hands. Men who'll pay you less, if at all. Men who'll... He stopped. Men who will try to take what they think is theirs. Namusa finished quietly. He nodded once. Thandeka didn't flinch. We have met such men before, she said. On the ships. In the harbor. Wearing uniforms, wearing smiles. Small men with big power. We endured them. We outlived them. We came here. This isn't the coast, Elias said. Out here, there's a lot more places for a body to vanish and never be missed. Then we must make ourselves too useful to vanish, Thandeka replied. Too many, too visible, too loud to ignore. That is where you come in, Elias Hart. He frowned. How do you figure? You are a pale man with calloused hands and timber in your blood, she said. These lands listen more to you than to us. We need a voice that opens doors instead of closing them. You cannot save us, but you can introduce us to the men who can decide whether we live as workers or die as beggars. He let that sit. The cabin sounds faded at the edges. He could hear his own heart. What if those men choose neither? He asked. What if they choose to see you as trouble to be cleared away? Thandeka's gaze cooled. Then at least we will know what we are fighting, she said. Starving quietly at the edge of your forest is not a better death than standing up. He respected that, even as it twisted his gut. He had spent years trying not to stand up to anyone, because every time he did, something got taken from him. Now he was being asked to step forward again. How many can walk? He asked. Namusa and Thandeka exchanged a glance. The young men. The stronger women, Namusa said. Maybe. 300? 4. The rest are too tired, too sick, or too small. We leave no one alone. You wouldn't have to, he said. I wouldn't take all of them at once. Thandeka nodded once. You choose how many this land can bear to let go at a time, she said. You know the rhythm of these snow paths. We do not. He thought of the road, narrow, rutted, half-iced. He thought of the timber town that waited beyond it. He thought of the way men spat when they talked about strangers taking wages. If we send too many, they'll panic, he said. They'll see an invasion, not a labor force. Maybe 25 to start, men with strong backs. Women who can swing an axe or haul a sled. Let them see what you can do before they decide what to call you. Namusa's brow furrowed. That is many days of food that can walk away, she said. and they will need strength for the work when they arrive. I have a little credit at the store, Elias said reluctantly. Flour, salt, maybe beans. Not enough to fuel an army. Enough to keep a small crew upright until the first pay. He blew out a slow breath. Assuming they get paid. You do not trust these men, Thandeka observed. I trust them to act like men with power, he said. Which means they'll give as little as they can get away with. He met her gaze. You cross the world. I just know this valley. If I say we move slow, it's because rushing will get you killed faster than hunger. Thandeka watched him a long moment, then nodded once. Then we move as you say, she said. But remember this, Elias Hart. Our patience has been stretched across oceans. Do not pull it too thin. He almost smiled. Wouldn't dare. They decided quickly after that. In the dim light of the cabin, Thandeka and Namusa murmured names, argued over who was strong enough, who was needed most to stay. Voices rose. A young man protested at being left behind. A woman insisted on going, her child clinging to her skirt. Elias watched, keeping his own tongue still. It was their argument. Their lives died in the end. They chose 20 men and 5 women. All lean, all tough in the eyes, all with the restless air of people who would rather walk toward danger than sit beside it. Namusa was among them. Tandk tried to dissuade her. Your place is here, she said in Zulu, forgetting to hide the rawness in her voice. They listen when you speak. I need you near me. Namusa shook her head. You need someone there to understand these men's mouths, she said, and to tell them ours. I will come back, or I will send word. Her eyes flicked to Elias. Someone must make sure he does not sell us too cheap. Elias raised his hands in mock surrender. I'm not much of a salesman, he said, but I'll argue for you. You will argue for yourself, Namusa said, because if they pay us well, they will pay you more. We are not charity, Elias. We are investment. He liked that word better. It made the whole thing feel less like drowning in someone else's need. Night fell hard and fast, as it always did in that country. Stars pricked the sky like ice points. The fires outside burned low but steady. People huddled under blankets and patched coats, sharing thin warmth and thinner stories. Elias walked the edge of the camp once more, listening. Snatches of Zulu drifted on the air, laced with English and French and languages he didn't know. Laughter, once in a while. A cough that worried him. Someone humming the same low sea song as before. He stopped by the barn, where the 25 chosen travelers sat around a small fire, checking their boots, wrapping extra rags around their ankles, tying bundles tight. Namusa sat slightly apart, sharpening a borrowed hatchet with slow, careful strokes. Sparks jumped and died on the snow. You should sleep, he said quietly. I have slept too much in places where I wanted to be awake, she said. Tonight, I want to feel the cold. He understood that, though he couldn't have explained why. He sat on an upturned crate, joints complaining. You ever seen snow before these lands? He asked. Once, she said. On a mountain far away. It was like the sky had fallen and could not get up. She tilted her head back, watching a little breath cloud drift up into the dark. Here, it feels like the world's bones. He looked at the forest, black against the stars. Some winters, it feels like the world decided to bury itself instead of waiting for us to do it, he said. She glanced at him, the ghost of a smile on her lips. You talk like a man who has been lonely too long. I talk like a man who's had too much time to think and not enough to do, he corrected. That changes tomorrow. Yes, she said. Tomorrow you lead 25 strangers to knock on the door of men who do not want them. Her eyes softened. You still have time to change your mind. He stared at the fire until the coals blurred. If I send you back into the trees, alone, he said, it'll be the same as turning the key on my brother's cell. I couldn't break that lock. I can open this door. Then we walk, she said simply. They rose before dawn, while the sky was still an iron lid over the trees. The camp stirred with them. Hands reached out to touch Namusa's shoulder, to squeeze a cousin's arm, to smooth a child's hair. The air between people was thick with unsaid words. Vandeka stood by the main fire, blanket wrapped tight, face stern. She looked at Elias as the chosen 25 lined up at the edge of the track. Bring them back as workers. Not ghosts, she said. I'll try, he answered. Do better than try, she said. Snow creaked under his boots as he stepped onto the trail, rifle slung, pack light. Namusa fell in beside him, hatchet at her belt. The others formed a ragged column behind them, their breath puffing white in the half-light. Elias took one last look at his homestead, at the thin line of smoke from his chimney, at the cluster of fires around the barn, at the dark shapes huddled against the cold. Then he turned his face toward the valley and started walking. The snow on the narrow road was crusted, but not solid. Each step broke through with a small crunch, then slid a fraction on whatever ice lay beneath. Elias placed his boots carefully, testing each patch before he put his weight down. Behind him, the line of 25 did the same, a slow rhythm of muted cracks and soft curses. The forest woke with them. Pines creaked as they swayed in some high wind that did not reach the ground. Frost cracked in the bark. Once, something small and furred bolted across the trail ahead of them, leaving a stuttering line of tracks before vanishing into the underbrush. Nobody spoke for the first hour. Breath and snow were sound enough. The dark thinned gradually, the sky behind the trees paling from iron to dull pewter. Elias's nose burned, then went numb. His beard stiffened with frost. Beside him, Namusa wrapped her shawl tighter and kept pace without complaint. Around mid-morning, when the cold had settled into their bones enough to feel permanent, Elias called a halt. The word came out more harshly than he intended. We stop, he said. 10 minutes, no more. Men sank onto logs or squatted by the trail, rubbing at their calves. One woman leaned against a tree, eyes closed, chest heaving. Elias unslung his pack and dug out a cloth parcel. Inside, hard biscuits rattled against each other like stones. He passed them down the line. Don't wolf it, he said. Chew slow. Your stomach will thank you. The biscuits were little more than flour and lard, dried until they might as well have been fired. The travelers cracked them with teeth that had known worse. A few added snow, letting it melt and soften the crumbs. Namusa held her biscuit in both hands, studying it as if it were a relic. This cost you, she said quietly. Everything does, he answered. Eat it anyway. She bit, winced, smiled. It tastes of work, she said. Better than charity. He drank a mouthful of water from his canteen, feeling the chill travel down his throat like a thin blade. Around them, the forest sagged under its own weight. Snowbound branches. Dead ferns poked through drifts like fingers. Another 6 hours if the trail holds, he said, mostly to himself. We'll make town by dark. Maybe. And if we do not? Namusa asked. Then we sleep in the trees and hope the wolves are busy, he said. Wolves? One of the younger men echoed, eyes widening. Elias jerked his head toward the forest. They travel the same paths we do, he said. Smarter than most men, hungrier than many, but they don't like big groups. Keep close. Keep the fire small but steady if it comes to that. Namusa translated, her words flowing smooth and low. The men glanced at the shadows between the trunks with new attention. They walked again. The trail widened slightly as they descended, the trees thinning in places to reveal glimpses of the valley ahead, a white bowl edged in black timber. A faint line of smoke marked where the river town sat, crouched on its bank like something that had grown there by accident. By midday, they reached a frozen creek that cut across the trail. Elias tested its surface with the butt of his rifle. The ice cracked but did not give. He stepped onto it, feet wide, weight low. "Walk light," he called back. "One at a time. If it sings, get off." The ice groaned under them, a long, mournful sound. No one spoke. Snow squeaked. Boots scraped. A hairline fracture shot out from under one man's foot, a white scar in the blue surface. He lunged for the far bank, made it, panting hard. Namusa crossed with jaw set, eyes fixed on the line of trees ahead. On the other side, they paused again. Elias watched the way the men stood, the way their shoulders rose and fell. They were tired, but not broken. Yet, "Tell them about the town," he said to Namusa when they started walking again. "Better they hear it now than taste it blind." "What shall I tell them?" she asked. "The truth," he said. "Or close enough." She drew her shawl tighter, thinking. "Describe it," she said, "so I know which truths to sharpen." He snorted softly. "This time of year, it smells like smoke and piss," he said. "Mud if it's warm, ice if it's not. There's the river, half frozen at the edges. A row of leaning houses with crooked chimneys. The sawmill squats at one end like a fat spider, spitting steam. The store's near the middle. Men stand outside it when they have nothing to do and no one to go home to." "Which is most of them, and the ones who make decisions?" she asked. "Bosses?" He shifted his pack higher. "The man who runs the sawmill. Name's Crandall. Big, loud. Thinks coins are a kind of god that only listens to him. The logging camps upriver send their loads down to him. He pays them, keeps what's left. Then there's Small, owns the store. He keeps the books for Crandall, which means he knows what everyone owes and who he can squeeze." "Crandall and Small," she repeated. "Big and little. Don't let the names fool you," Elias said. "Small has teeth. Crandall has fists." Namusa gave a short, humorless laugh. "We have met men like this," she said. Then, louder, in Zulu, she spoke to the others, painting the town with her words. Elias caught fragments, river like cracked glass, houses like old teeth, men like vultures. Her people listened, faces unreadable. The trail dipped steeper. The snow thinned to a crust over dirt and old ice. Elias's knees began to ache. He pushed on in the late afternoon. When the trees finally broke and the valley opened at their feet, a murmur ran through the line. The town lay ahead, smaller than a city, larger than a village. Smoke rose from half a dozen chimneys. The river cut a dark, slow line through the white. Elias halted them at the edge of the clearing. "Stay here," he said. "Catch your breath. Get your faces calm. Men smell fear like dogs." Namusa stepped closer. "You go alone?" she asked. "For the first few words," he said. "If 25 strangers walk in behind me, Crandall will slam the door before I open my mouth. Let me talk to him where he can see my empty hands." She studied him, weighing what he was asking. "If he tries to cheat you?" she asked. "He's cheated me before," Elias said. "I know how his hands move. I'm not offering him charity. I'm offering labor. He understands that language." She nodded slowly. "We will wait," she said. "But not forever. Give me an hour," he said. "If I'm not back, you make your own judgment." He left them there, half hidden among the thinning pines, and walked down the slope alone. As he approached, the town drew details around itself. The boards on the houses were warped and gray, shingles patched with whatever could be nailed down. The sawmill loomed at the river's edge, its tall chimney coughing steam and smoke. The river wheel sat mostly still under ice, creaking when the current shoved it. 3 men stood on the boardwalk outside the store, shoulders hunched against the cold, tin cups in their hands. They watched Elias approach with the flattened stare of men whose world rarely surprised them. "Morning," Elias called, though it was creeping toward evening. "Afternoon," one of them corrected, spinning over the rail. You forget how the sun works up there in your trees, Hart. Too busy working to look up, Elias said easily. The men grunted something that might have been a laugh. One of them, a bald fellow with a nose that had been broken more than once, narrowed his eyes. You ain't been in town in weeks, he said. Thought the forest finally swallowed you. Spat me back out, Elias replied. He nodded toward the sawmill. Crandall in? Inside, the bald man said. Counting, like always. Anyone dead? Elias asked. Not yet, another man said. Though he's been killing us one tally at a time. They chuckled. Elias walked on, boots thumping hollow on the boards. The sawmill door was a heavy slab of wood banded with iron. He pushed it open and stepped into heat and noise. Inside, the air was thick with sawdust and steam. The big saws were quiet at the moment, but the smell of their work lingered: resin, hot metal, fresh-cut pine. Crandall stood at a crude desk near the far wall, pencil in hand, lips moving as he muttered over a ledger. He was a broad man, belly pushing against his vest, shoulders like barrels. His beard was trimmed short, more out of practicality than vanity. A gold chain looped from his vest pocket, catching the lamplight. He looked up, eyebrows rising. Hard, he said. Didn't expect you till thaw. Run out of trees already? Plenty of trees, Elias said, shutting the door behind him. The relative warmth slapped his cheeks. I came with something else. Crandall snorted. You got anything worth more than timber? I'll eat my hat, he said. Elias stepped closer, careful to keep his voice level. What you got is a shortage of hands, he said. Last time I was in, you were cursing about a camp upriver folding. Too many men drifting off, not enough staying sober long enough to work. Crandall's eyes narrowed. I got enough mouths taking my money as it is, he said. If you came to beg credit, save your breath. I didn't, Elias said. I came to sell you labor. 25 strong backs ready to swing axes and haul sleds. Men and women who crossed an ocean and a winter and haven't broken yet. You put them on your crews, you'll get more trees down before spring than you planned. Crandall stared at him for a long moment, then barked a laugh. You opened a nursery up in those pines, Hart? He said. What? You breeding loggers now? Ship cast-offs from the coast, Elias said bluntly. Africans. Zulu, they call themselves. Harbor Town dumped them like rotten cargo. They walked inland. They're camped on my land now, hungry, cold, strong. Crandall's amusement thinned. Black, he said, as if tasting something sour. Yes, Elias said. Black, tough, used to being treated like mules and still standing. You put an axe in their hands, they'll cut what you point at. Crandall's jaw worked. He leaned back against the desk, arms crossing over his chest. The ledger creaked faintly as he pressed against it. You gone soft up there alone, Hart? He asked. You think the men'll share bunks with a pack of darkskins and sing songs about brotherhood? They'll share bunks with whoever keeps the cookhouse open, Elias said. You told me yourself you were short. Or was that just noise for the sake of hearing your own voice? Crandall's eyes flashed. Careful, he said softly. Elias swallowed down the instinct to flinch. You want to beat the other mills come thaw? He asked. You get more logs in the river. You win. Right now, you're watching half your crew drink themselves to a standstill because they know you got no one to replace them. Put my people in the forest with them, and suddenly that changes. Men work different when they know there's someone else ready to take their place. Crandall chewed on that, metaphorically and almost physically, his jaw moving side to side. The mill creaked around them. Say I was mad enough to take them on, he said slowly. What would they cost me? Same pay as the others, Elias said quickly. Same food. Same roof. You don't need trouble over wages. You pay them fair, they'll stay. You try to shave them, they'll know it. Crandall snorted. Like they got somewhere else to go, he said. They got the river, Elias replied. And 2 good legs each. You treat them so bad they'd rather risk another winter walking than stay. That's on you. But if they leave, they'll talk. And you'll be the man who cheated the only people more desperate for work than the drunks you already have. That'll be your name up and down the valley. Crandall's gaze sharpened. You threatening me, Hart? He asked. I'm describing your world, Elias said quietly. Same as it's always been. Silence settled between them, thick as sawdust. Crandall drummed his fingers on the ledger cover, his eyes unfocused for a moment, as if he were seeing lines of numbers instead of the man in front of him. How many did you say? He asked. 25, Elias said. More, if it works. Hundreds, if you've got the guts and the grain. Crandall's eyes flicked back to him. Hundreds, he repeated. You planning on starting an army in my woods? I'm planning on keeping people alive, Elias said. What you do with their sweat is your business. Crandall grunted. Everything's my business, one way or another. He straightened. All right. I'll look at them. No promises. I see weak legs. I send them back to your doorstep. You take responsibility for whatever trouble walks in with them. I'll take it, Elias said. Damn right you will, Crandall said. You brought them here in your mouth. You'll answer for any noise they make. He grabbed his coat from a peg, shrugging into it with practiced force. Let's go meet your miracle workers. Elias followed him out, feeling sweat cooling under his shirt despite the cold. Outside, the light was already thinning toward evening. The 3 men on the boardwalk watched curiously as Crandall strode past. Where are you heading, boss? The bald one called, to see what kind of madness Hart's dragged out of the trees this time. Crandall said without slowing. They climbed the slope toward the tree line, breath clouding, boots sliding on patches of ice. Crandall puffed harder than Elias expected, but he didn't complain. A man like that couldn't afford to show strain-dot as the first dark shapes of trees closed around them. Crandall slowed. His eyes flicked to the shadows. They armed? He asked. With what? Elias said. Hope? A few hatchets. Less than your own crews carry. Crandall grunted. Hope's a dangerous weapon, he muttered. They know that, Elias said. They've lived with it longer than you have. When they reached the rise overlooking the hidden camp, Elias stopped. He let out a low whistle, the sound he used in the woods to call without words. Below, among the trees, figures shifted. Heads turned. The 25 rose from where they'd been sitting, shaking out stiff legs. Namusha stepped forward to the edge of the clearing, shawl dark against the snow. Her gaze climbed the slope, found Elias, then slid to the broad man beside him. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath between them. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and comment what country you're watching from. See you in the next one.